time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE. Beatrice Mayor Stan Worth is off on other duties today, and we have a special program today. We're glad to welcome in a new Chief of Police, John Hickman, for his inaugural visit to KWBE here. Welcome in, John.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you in here. You are from Montana. We'll get into your background and everything, but it's been kind of a, few weeks of transition here, and you finally took over as the new Chief of Police here just recently. What was the transition like for you? Here?
Oh, we went from wildfires and blizzards to hailstorms and tornadoes. So, I guess one crazy weather extreme to another. Yeah. But no, it's been good. It's, getting used to all the little nuances of Nebraska has been a little bit different, but police work is a lot the same no matter where you're at. So there's a lot of familiarity there as well.
Yeah. Talk about Glendive, the type of community it was, how long you were there, and is it similar in any way to here as far as procedures and things you went through, or what was it like there?
Well, Glendive is a city of about 5,000 people, so it's I guess about 2.5 times smaller than Beatrice is, but it is also kind of a rural community, farming, ranching community. So there's a lot of similarity there. It's a little bit the same. Hiring process was a little bit different. We had one interview, in-person interview, and then we had one that they did over the phone when I got hired in Glendive. Versus here, we had 4 in-person interviews. So those kind of things are different. And then the way that the state certifies people is also a little bit different here. Yeah. So just different hoops to jump through.
Yeah. We were talking before the program, too, about the civil service process. It's a little bit different than other states have in that it does provide some level of assurance for somebody hired in a public safety position that, yeah, you're the person and you're going to be here and you can't just be dismissed or hired for any particular reason. There's a process to go through.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a very big positive if you're coming here and you're part of a police chief or a fire chief, because you have to be let go with cause versus most places that you work around the country. You work at the pleasure of the mayor, so they could let you go, if they just wanted to hire their friend or for any other reason, really. So it definitely gives you a little bit of protection, makes it a little more attractive when you look at an agency, and Nebraska's fairly fortunate in that aspect. Yeah.
Was it tough at all to leave Glendive? I know when you uproot and you go to another community, there's changes and things, but there are career advancements too with it. But what was it like leaving?
Well, Montana is a sportsman's paradise, and I am all about hunting and fishing and all those things outdoors. So that was pretty hard to leave, and it's a gorgeous area. It's in the Badlands, and so it's very beautiful. But coming to Nebraska is a little bit more like I'm used to in the Carolinas. There's some trees here, which is really nice. So some greenery as it rains, you get some green grass, and out there everything's brown most of the year. So it's definitely a little bit different when it comes to the topography and the way that it looks. But
now, size of community, you've been in probably all sizes, haven't you? In North Carolina, you were in a much larger city, I understand.
Yeah, I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is probably somewhere around 250,000 people. But I've also worked in cities that were smaller than Glendive. I've worked in, Glendive was about 5,000, this one's 13, so this is a medium-sized city. And so I've had a little bit of all of it, and I kind of like the medium-sized cities because you get a lot of the same types of things that you can have in the big city, but you also have the small town feel, and people, are friendly. Everybody knows you. You get to know everybody there, so it's kind of a nice medium size to be in. Yeah.
Talk about your family a little bit. I know I saw them at the council meeting when you were introduced, but everybody getting adjusted and getting used to the area? Yeah?
They are, yep. I have my wife, Elizabeth, and then I have 2 sons, Austin and Colton, and my daughter, Savannah, and my oldest son, Austin. He's currently in the military, and he's overseas serving there. And then my son and daughter are both still school age, so they're still here at the house, and they're getting used to the town, visiting the pool and library and all that good stuff. So
your son overseas, what branch of the service is he in?
He is in the Army. Wow. He's an artilleryman in the Army, so over there in Korea. So we're very proud of him.
Yeah. Boy, thank him for his service, because I know it's a commitment to the U.S. to go. Are you a service veteran at all, or what?
I am not. My wife is. She was in the Air Force. I did contract work for the military overseas for a couple of years, but I was never in the military.
Comparisons, the department you left and this department in terms of personnel divisions and things like that, pretty different, or some similarities, or how do you see that?
I would say we have this is about 2.5 times bigger of a department than Glendive was. We also have a dedicated SRO program here, which we didn't have in Glendive, and we also have a dedicated investigations division, which we didn't have there. In Glendive, we had a communications center which dispatched for other agencies as well, just like we do here in Beatrice. And then we also had, of course, patrol. And there the officers worked investigations and patrol as part of their job duties. And here we have it separated out, which is pretty common in a smaller agency that they have to do a little bit of each one. But it's nice whenever you can break it down and have it, because you get to focus more time on the investigation itself and making sure all the steps are done and followed. And so there's a little bit more in the divisions here in Beatrice. We also have a full-time SWAT team, and versus we didn't have one in Montana. So there's a lot of good things here that the community gets to take advantage of. So,
and the SWAT unit, that's kind of a multi-agency thing, isn't it, too? Is that police and sheriffs? Or
it used to be.
Yeah,
and currently the Gage County Sheriff's Office and the Beatrice Police Department, they have their own.
I see. Okay.
So we have our own standalone team. 2
narcotic sniffing dogs, too, that you have.
We do, and they are the most famous people in the police department, and they get a lot more attention and love. But we love the dogs; they're really good. And I'm just like everybody else when they come in. Everybody wants to see the canines, and I don't know if anybody knows who the handlers are, but we all know who the canines are. So it's really a good thing to be able to have two canines, especially in a city this size. That's a really, really good asset here for us.
In addition to the serious work that they do in drug investigations, they are ambassadors for the department too. Because when you go out before school kids and things like that, it's kind of nice it's just kind of a community connection too, isn't it?
It is. And one of our canines is assigned to the high school. And so all the kids get to see them on a daily basis, and everybody knows who they are and all the kids know. So it builds the relationships there, because the officers get to interact with the students as well. So it just opens up avenues of communication. You
mentioned communications dispatch center. I know there's been an effort here locally to regionalize that, because the cost of just everybody doing their own has just gotten to the point where it's not really feasible. Is that similar to what Montana does in regionalizing things, or what's been the trend there?
Well, nationwide, I think we're going towards that. I think that in the next probably 10 years or so, everybody will be regionalized. Yeah. As you said, it's not cost effective to have individual centers at every agency, because there's just too much redundancy. You're paying for the same equipment over and over and over, versus you can pay for it one time and put it in one center, and it takes less people that way to staff. So I think a lot of places are going that way. In Glendive, in Montana, where I worked, we also dispatch for the sheriff's office and for the EMS and the firefighters, and those kind of things. So it wasn't as regionalized quite as Beatrice is, because we've reached out through other counties. But there are some regionalized centers in the state, and I think it's going to grow to that. So,
and if everybody shares the cost, it's a little bit easier on everybody in the long run.
It is, and you can have more up-to-date equipment. Yeah. And dispatch is a very technology-driven endeavor. So it takes a lot to keep up with the times and make sure that your technology is not outdated. Things just like being able to text 911, something that simple requires a whole lot of technology and a lot of work and a lot of money to be able to make that happen. So, the less agencies that have to do it, then the better off you are, because you're able to spread the funds out a little bit.
We're speaking with new Chief of Police of Beatrice, John Hickman, today on Ask the Mayor. We'll be back with more in just a moment. We're back on Ask the Mayor today with special guest, the new Chief of Police for the City of Beatrice, John Hickman, who comes from Beatrice, from Glendive, Montana. We're talking about some of the nuances of police divisions, work, officers, size of department between the two communities. Let me get your impression of the officers the department has and the personnel that you've been able to meet over time these first few weeks on the job.
I've been very impressed with the officers and the dispatchers that we have here. We've got a very, very dedicated team of people, very competent team of people. They know their jobs. They do them very well. It's been really nice. A lot of times when you go to an agency, you never know what you're getting, and some places you go into and there's a lot to correct, and it's obvious that Bruce put a lot of work into it when he was the chief here, and the staff is very, very, very good. I've been very impressed.
The level of training, ongoing training it takes, is pretty extensive in a lot of areas, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. We train every month as a department, and then we have other trainings that are sprinkled throughout the month that different officers will take in different specialties and things of that nature, as well as our dispatchers. They have to keep up with training too, just make sure we maintain our certifications. And I'm big on training. I think the more training you get, the better it is. And so I like the training, and we're able to push extra training, which just, in my opinion, makes it better for the community, because you have a better trained, a better caliber of officer. It also lowers liability and things of that nature. So I'm pretty happy with the level of training that we get here.
One thing I've heard over the years kind of repeatedly is that if there's one thing that maybe chiefs of police could change a little bit, even though the training is important, is the amount of time it takes to get a new officer on duty and go through the entire process. Is that a difficulty everywhere or what?
It is. It is. It's kind of a struggle because you hire a body because you want somebody to fill a position and be able to be out on the road and be able to do their job. But you hire them and then it takes, maybe 6 months sometimes before they're able to actually go out and do that job. So as an administrator, you're kind of in a rush to get them there, but also you see the value in the training. So, I think it's a good thing that it takes a long time because there's so much to learn in this job before you are, very, very competent in doing it. So it's a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword because, like you said, you have a guy that you want to put on the road, but you can't because they're not trained yet.
Yeah. Probably unfair to ask you this because you've been here just a few weeks now through the transition now as the new chief of police. But as you look at the department right now and how things are done, any objectives out there for changes or things you'd like to add or take away or emphasize more than maybe others?
Well, when I came here, I decided to take a couple months, look at it, do an evaluation of the department, kind of find out where we're at before we tried to implement any major changes. When I got here, there wasn't any glaring things that stood out that, hey, we have to change this right away. So we want to see what we do really good, and then we want to see what we could do better. I think if you're going to make a change, you don't make a change just to say you did. You make a change to make yourself better or more professional. So we're looking at those kind of things. But as far as things that we're doing now, one of the things that I've pushed to the staff is that, the community policing aspect of it is that I want us to ramp that up even more. I think we do a really good job of it currently. But I think you can always do better. So we're looking at new ways of expanding that and new things that we can implement.
My perception of the image of police, especially in recent years in this area, has been very good between the community and the department, and that you see a lot of officers that are involved in community activities, not because they're forced to, but because they want to be involved in that. Some areas of the country, of course, this as being a police officer, police don't have maybe the greatest perception from the public. Is that tough dealing with? Has that been tough dealing with as an officer?
Well, I've been very fortunate. I think that in the last few years where I've worked, we've been supported very well by the community, and I think it's exactly the same here in Gage County and Beatrice. I think that we, in this agency, has done a lot to develop relationships in the community and to invest in the community, and it's paid dividends. There hasn't been a lot of negativity here, and our officers still get. Our officers still get a lot of support from the public. So I think that there's some places around the nation that that's a problem. I think we're very fortunate here that it's not, and I think it's because of the work that the officers put in. Things like the Lunch with the Cop program. When the officers actually developed that wasn't something that came from the top. They went out on their own and decided to start that program. And there's a lot of programs like that we do. And it just gets the officers out, so I think the public sees them more as people than they do as just a uniform walking down the street. Yeah. And that's the goal.
The school resource officer program here with an officer at the middle school and then one at the high school too, as we mentioned earlier, seems like a really good community connection, not because of just the young people and the officers working there and seeing them every day, but I guess also the kids tell their parents, hey, I know Officer Lowenstein. I know, a member of the police department that I see every day. Is that a good connection there as well?
Oh, it is, absolutely. And they see them when they're out in town. They'll wave and say hey to them, and it helps us a lot because we also get to know the parents through that a lot of times. And so not just the connection with the children and not just for the safety of the schools, but also for the connections with the adults that you're getting through it as well. And it lets them. The kids get to go home and tell them stories about, we had the canine officer and we had this, or we had Officer Nesbitt or whoever was there, and they get to see them as from a different viewpoint as well, which I think is very beneficial on both sides. So
long term, do you think it serves as a prevention for young people that may get into crime later in life? Do you think it has an impact on them? How do you see that? I
definitely think it has an impact. A lot of times people, especially kids, if they never have an authority figure sometimes in their life, and they get to know the officer and the officer knows them. And I've seen situations where, a kid might have started down a wrong path and the officer recognized it because they knew the child from the whole time they were coming up in school, and they were able to go pull them aside and talk to them a little bit. And, they realized that people noticed, people were watching, and I think it steered them away from it. And I think it has a huge impact on the trajectory of their lives. And, so if you can keep one child from going down a bad path, it's a win. But I think that when you have an SRO in a school, you get a lot more than just one. So.
Yeah, your SROs right now, they're kind of back on road patrol now, aren't they?
They are. They're on the road. They don't get to take a lot of vacation time during the school year because they're in the schools. So during the summer is generally when they get a little bit of break. So I think they're enjoying that. But when they're not off, they're absolutely out on patrol and working hard.
Yeah. The importance of locally elected officials' support of public safety, mayors, city councils. I'm sure it varies from community to community, depending on the issues of the day or things that are happening in the community. But how important is that to you as head of a public safety department?
Well, I mean, it's extremely important. The mayor, city council, city manager, they're my boss. But in essence, we all work for the public, no matter which position you have. And so if you have a mayor who and a city manager and a council who support the police department, it makes our job so much easier because we're able to go to them and say, hey, look, this is what we need. This is why we need it. And they're able to say, yeah, we can help you with that. Or, and even having a good mayor where you can go to or a city manager and say, hey, look, this is an issue that I'm having and be able to get advice from them. It's very good. One thing that I really like about this city is that they hire people that they believe are competent and good at their jobs, and then they let them manage that section because each one's different. I personally don't know anything about running Mars, but I know how to run a police department. And so it's good when you have a mayor who's able to come in or a city manager that comes in and says, hey, we're gonna oversee you, but we're gonna let you do your jobs, and that's important because a lot of places don't run that way. A lot of places there's a lot of a lot of conflict between them, and I think that we don't have that here, and I think that's a testament to the city and how well it's run from the top. So,
when you came to Beatrice, of course, you got a pretty sizable police department headquarters at 5th and Ella. Of course, a brand new fire department down the block, which was sorely needed for many years in this area. But I can remember when I came here, the police department was basically it was like a hall closet compared to the way it is right now. What was your impressions when you first arrived as far as the space you had available, the facilities you had available? Yeah,
they're very nice. We have a lot of facilities. We have a lot of space, which is something that is generally not a problem that you have, is having enough space. Everybody's we don't have enough room, so that's really nice. The fire hall that they got, I was messing around with Chief Dakey the other day about it, but we're glad they got it. They needed a new fire hall, and it's a very, very nice building. It's honestly one of the nicest fire halls I've ever been in. The way it was laid out is very nice, and so I think it's good when you have nice facilities and you are able to spread out and use the facilities as needed. Versus like you said before, they were in like a one room, I believe it was, in the old auditorium building. So the facilities definitely are very, very nice. I noticed that when I got here, and so we're pretty pleased with that.
And the departments work together too. I know when the fire department goes out on a call, police provides security around the scene and blocks off areas and things like that. So you cross paths in the everyday doing business too.
We do, and it's not just the fire department. It's all the departments in the city, whether it be parks or sanitation or whoever. We all kind of work together. It kind of takes a team to get everything done. And while fighting a fire may not be my thing, we have a role in that whenever they go to a fire, and I'm sure that enforcing law is probably not, Parks and Rec's responsibility, but they're able to help us with a lot of the environmental side of it and things of that nature. So, it takes a whole team, and everybody here really works well together. We have department head meetings where all the departments get together and we're able to talk and share, and I think it's helped build the teamwork environment here in the city. So that's been very encouraging.
Now, at your department, you have state probation that's right above you there on the second floor. Does that present any advantages, disadvantages, or it just a happenstance that that's the way it worked out? You had a state probation above police officer.
Well, I would say that I've never seen that before, so when I came here, that was new. The advantages are that I was able to get to know some of the probation officers a lot faster because generally we're on the front side of the justice system, and they're on the back end of the justice system because of just the way it lays out. And so a lot of times we don't get to interact and interface with them. Being in the same building, we've been able to meet them and talk to them a little bit more and build those relationships a little bit better.
All right. We'll be back to wrap up our Ask the Mayor program with the new Chief of Beatrice Police, John Hickman, coming up in just a moment. 6-7 minutes left on Ask the Mayor today. Our guest is new Chief of Beatrice Police, John Hickman. We touched on it a little bit earlier in the program regarding community relations and police involvement, but kind of your philosophy about that as the head of a department. Obviously, you have a job to do. You have to enforce laws, and there are traffic stops and drug investigations and things like that. But as far as just working within the community, how do you see that?
Well, I think it's a balancing act. I think we definitely have what people would consider the negative side, where we have to go out and we have to arrest people and those kind of things, and we have to do our investigations, and that's required. We don't have an option there, but on the other side, you have to build the relationships within the community. I think that it needs to be something that you do, not something that you say. And I think that there's a lot of people like to say the term community policing, but then there really isn't any. And some people make it a lot more difficult than it is. It's simply just going out and interacting with the community, building relationships, meeting people, and hearing from the community what they want. Because I may go to a neighborhood and say, this is the problem in this neighborhood because of whatever the data is showing me on, on numbers that I run. But the person living in the community may say, no, my problem is just, every day when school gets out, there's somebody speeding up and down my road. Yeah. And that's their biggest concern, And so if you don't go out and you don't build those relationships, you never know that. And that person's irritated, living in that neighborhood versus it's a simple thing for us to go out there and try to take care of that. So, you have to build those relationships, be able to talk to people, just go out and, it helps us because the more that people are comfortable with us, the easier it is for us to solve crimes because people are willing to come forward and say, hey, I know this officer and I know the other day that this happened, and they're able to come give us information and things of that nature. So it helps us on both sides. It helps the community be safer, and then it also helps us do our job better, and it builds relationships, and everybody's happy. So, I think it's a very, very important part of policing.
In Glendive, and of course a smaller community, but what was in your final years there, was there a particular problem or crime that kind of dogged you at some point, or that was tough to deal with, or what?
Well, I think it's probably the same crime that everybody's dogged with right now it's drugs. It's such a plague in our communities, and I'm very thankful that we're able to have a dedicated narcotics investigator here. It has really helped lower the crime rate with narcotics here in Beatrice. But that's a problem across the country. Unfortunately, it's just kind of a cancer, and everybody is constantly fighting it.
At one time, wasn't there federal support for drug task forces that has kind of gone away a little bit, and it's been more up to the departments themselves to sort of organize their own programs with other agencies? Is that what it's like now, basically? It is.
There's still some funding out there, but most of it, mainly goes to the major metropolitan areas and things of that nature. But yeah, locally, it's kind of up to the agencies to fund and find ways to do it. There's not quite as much support anymore from the federal side.
We seem to hear the most concern about methamphetamine, but then now you're talking about, mixture of highly potent things that can do a lot of damage quickly to people. What's your concerns long-term about what you think you may see down the road in terms of drug presence or dealing or possession?
Well, I think that drugs get a little bit stronger, it seems like every year. They come up with a new drug and what they would call a better drug, something to give them a bigger high. But the flip side of that is it just becomes more dangerous for the community. There's a lot of overdose deaths, a lot more than we used to have, and so it keeps increasing. So I think that there has to be an added importance on the drug enforcement to fight the drugs, because if not, it starts getting in your community and it starts costing you a lot of lives. And we've been very fortunate here in the last several years with the efforts that have been put forth that we don't have a lot of that. But we have to be constantly aware that is a problem, and that's something that we're going to address.
Okay. One of the programs that I wanted to touch on just a little bit today that has been in Beatrice quite a while now, and that's a Crime Victims Coordinator's position, which helps out not only in Beatrice, but Gage County in total as well, and kind of works through part of that process with people that are affected by crime. What's your impression of that program here, and did you have that when you were in Montana?
So the impression of it here is that it's an incredible program. The ladies that work that program for us, they are extremely passionate about it. And it's great for the victims to have that voice as they go through the process and have somebody that's just there for them. They're not there representing the state, or they're not there representing the offender. They're just there for them, and they help them go through the process. It takes a lot of the stress off because they're able to explain the steps as they go through the process. and just be a voice and a shoulder for them. So it's very, very helpful. I think it's been said on this show before, this is one of the few places where it's actually housed in the police department, which I think is an incredible thing because we're able to talk to them from the very beginning and get them involved in the process instead of it waiting until it goes to the courts to get them in it. And they're able to honestly help the officers a whole lot because they can provide resources that the officers themselves may not have. In Glendive, we did have a victim's assistance, but it was not part of the police department. And I believe this is probably the model that everybody should go to. In my opinion, I think it's a very, very good thing. We share it with the sheriff's office, but I can't stress enough how great those ladies are that work it. They are incredible and do a lot of really good job.
And I know they provide a connection with the prosecutors up the line, too, as to meeting with crime victims and things, too, so that kind of helps. And, for people that think everything happens fast in criminal prosecution, that's not the case, is it? It's a long process from arrest to conviction.
It takes a long time, and there's always people who complain it takes too long or whatever. But you have to build a good case, and then it has to go through the prosecutor's office, and it's got to get to the courts, and there's a lot of cases out there, so it just takes a little while to get through. And having the victims advocates there to be able to explain that to the victims and keep them apprised of where your case is in the process, it is very helpful.
Have just about a minute left, maybe a little bit less, but as you look out, regardless of the size of the police department or where you're at, what's maybe one of the one or two big challenges do you think law enforcement's facing in the coming years, would you say?
Well, I think recruiting and retention are something that's got to be focused on. It's becoming a kind of a problem across the nation. So we have to focus a lot on how we're going to recruit people and how we're going to retain the employees that we have. Technology, I think that crimes are becoming a lot more technology driven, so we have to stay up on the training to be able to investigate those kind of crimes and make sure we're able to deter them. And then I think with communication centers, as I mentioned earlier, they're technology driven. The technology gets outdated so fast that you have to be able to keep up with it, and it takes a lot of planning and budgeting to be able to make sure you can do those kind of things. So I think those are two or three of the things that will be a big focus here.
Right. Well, Chief, we welcome you to Beatrice, and thanks for coming in for your first program here on KWBE.
Thank you for having me.